So you already know I'm literary, so I have to quote George Bernard Shaw, before I kick this off. And it's connected to communications in pharma, I promise. So the single biggest problem of communication is that we don't know if it's even happening or not. I'm paraphrasing George Bernard Shaw, and rightfully so. The panel today is, just like we say the doctor is in, is the copy really in? And today I have 4 amazing panelists who sit at the intersection of data, marketing, omnichannel experiences, and all things HCP. So I'm going to hand the baton to them to introduce themselves. They clearly know what they're doing much more than I do. So onward to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Stacy Enoch. I work at AstraZeneca. I am an associate director, and I focus on connecting technology and opportunities to the business goals and needs of our different brands. And I work across DTC and HCP as well.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Avinash Prabhakar. I lead a team of HCP marketers at GSK. I work in blood cancers for a rare blood cancer, but it turns out I think a number of people in the audience might also work for that blood cancer, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Look forward to the discussion. Thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Shawn McKenna. I'm the Senior Director for Analytics and Data at a smaller privately held biopharma out of Tennessee. Nice to meet you all.
I'm Angela Esposito. I think this is on. I am the founder of Chronic Consultancy, where I do integrated marketing for life science brands, but I do a focus on patient storytelling and HCP storytelling. I set up influencer marketing programs for them, and I also run the Chronic Creator Club, which helps people living with chronic conditions become influencers or content creators when they can't work a typical 9 to 5.
Well, thank you. See, I told you they're awesome, and better coming from them than me. So let's get right to it. So in the 15 minutes a doctor has with the rep, they get blasted over 10 promotional emails. And the result is 80% of HCPs, they say the communications are generic, and less than 20% say that they're engaged. So we're going to really discuss what does this mean for the doctor. And so first question is, how does pharma stop reducing the noise and really cuts through the teeth? So I'm going to hand this question over to Avinash, and then Stacy with some real-world examples.
All right, Joe, thank you. So HCP marketing to doctors, ultimately, I think it's taken a while for me to just get right to the point. You know, what do doctors care most about? They care most about efficacy. So I'm leading a team of people for our rare blood cancer launch. It's going pretty well. No insult to anyone else here in the room from another competitor company. But from our vantage point, it's going pretty well. One of the things that differentiate us, for example, is transfusion independence. You know, it's one of the endpoints in our studies, and it is a benefit to patients because the blood cancer that they have, anemia is a major problem. So what we do and have done since our approval is to really go right to that efficacy message, for example, and lead with the evidence. And that really works because the doctors see a benefit for their patients in terms of efficacy, and it makes them want to learn more. So evidence first, deep linking to the pages in the website that have that efficacy message is what we're doing now, and it seems to really resonate with the HCPs we're trying to reach.
So then, Stacy, would you like to follow this through with some examples that AstraZeneca is doing, and then we'll hand it to Angela for the whole integrated scenario.
Yeah, I think we've heard throughout the morning that HCPs are consuming information in many different ways now than has been done traditionally. You know, their efforts to stay on top of all the information and the information overload that's coming to them is a continuous battle. So now what HCPs are looking for and how this ecosystem is changing is that they're looking for short form content. It's not just about the long form symposia that they're going to get scientific data. They're getting clinical summaries sent to their inboxes. They're on social media platforms that are also providing updates and advances within the industry. So, you know, for pharmaceutical companies like AZ, we have to be on top of that. The journey isn't about a linear journey or just stuffing their inboxes with content. They want personalized content that is also going to be very targeted. Maybe it's role specific, related to their specialty. So you really have to think ahead, and the strategy has to be dead on, because if you don't have the right strategy, you're just going to amplify your noise at the top of the funnel. So some of the things that we're doing at AZ, we are looking into what I'll just call novel platforms that are taking the way doctors work in their clinical practices to provide information at the time of clinical decision-making. One example I can think of is open evidence. I know many people probably have heard of this in recent days because it's fast becoming one of the largest platforms for HCPs to get this inquiry-based information right when they're with a patient or making a decision. You know, and open evidence, for those that know it, is, I think, kind of a hybrid platform that's out there now, because it's inquiry-based, and as we're all seeing now with the different search AI-enabled engines, that's how people are starting to think about getting their information and answering the questions that are top of mind. So, a couple of samples.
That's great. Can you speak a little bit about how trust comes to play? Because 3 out of 5 doctors are now, I know you are all AI'd out, so I have to join the party. So the 3 out of 5 are using AI for clinical information. So before we hand it over to Angela, can you elaborate a little bit on how trust is being established? Because, you know, HCPs love going back to research. So I'd just like to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think trust is a big thing. And again, that does go back to the strategy. So you need to have your clinical data in order. You need to have your messaging organized and aligned across channels and across the different silos within your organization. That starts with consistency of your content development strategy. And then from a channel standpoint, you do want to do the due diligence. For example, with open evidence, they're really sourced among all the major medical journals, so AMA, JAMA, you know, ACA. So there's good data that's related to that AI that's coming through that channel. So again, you know, as a pharma company or a brand, you want to be associated with those credible sources and not just out there, you know, with information on Reddit or something like that.
Could I pick up on the trust comment?
Sure.
Because this came up earlier in the day from the earlier presentations, and it's so important. One of the things that's going well for us right now with this launch is that we say the product does 3 things in terms of efficacy. Transfusion independence is one. If it doesn't actually work out that way, when doctors try to use it, everything can fall apart no matter what your, you know, how great your strategy or messaging is. Turns out this medicine actually does work the way we say it does, and doctors really love that. We tell them it's going to work this way, they try it out, and it actually does what we say. So trust is really important. Everything can fall apart if you don't have it. I just wanted to add that in.
Thank you for that. And she said JAMA, so that says it all. So Angela, I would love your perspective on the integrated picture here, given the work you do.
Okay, I'm going to be a little provocative, just to wake everybody up, because I know they're ready for lunch. The party's over. And what I mean by that is that the heyday of, I would imagine, the 80s and 90s, you used to take out your surgeons and clinicians and ball out, for lack of a better term, and wine and dine them and have those experiences where it's those personal relationships and proximity and access to reps and bringing those bags of donuts in for the front staff. We have the kibosh put on that now with compliance, and for good reason. If you've ever seen Dope Sick, I definitely recommend it, because it probably shouldn't have gone on as long as it did. We have to make decisions now that are built on clinical evidence, and that needs to be found easily, concisely. And I think we went through a stage of, you know, with the birth of the internet, going from all this push marketing where ads are being thrown in their face, email marketing campaigns have nurture streams that go on for days. They're getting inundated with messages. You need to show up where they are. And if I was to give you any piece of advice on what to work on with your brand and your strategy over the next year or so, is to be discoverable on AI. I think it's like mission critical now for you to find ways in which you're answering problems to your patients. To your point earlier, when we were watching that customer-centric presentation, it's key that we're making that an area of focus, because it's really difficult for us to grab their attention. But if we're in the exact places where they're searching, because they're digital consumers like the rest of us, then we should win big. So if you can focus there, but you still have to do all the other stuff too. You still need your social, you still need your website to be optimized, you still need all those pages, but maybe you can add in an AI chat box, which will help them find your product guide in 2 seconds. It shouldn't be a horrible UX journey for those clinicians trying to get access to information. It should be a fun, seamless experience because they have like 5 minutes between seeing their next patient. So make it simple and fun.
Thank you. And you beat me to my AI question. So I'm going to take your cue and talk about how siloed, like I love that you said UX. And I know you don't like the S word, but I'm a marketer. I have to say silo. So bear with me. But 93% of the budgets are misattributed. And that's a marketer's biggest challenge. Like, how do I prove the ROI? So I said ROI too. So buzzword bingo, win. So I want to pose the question to the panel. Let's talk about how we can bridge the divide between HCP and DTC strategy. And I know you touched upon it a lot with all of the universe coming together. So the question is, how do we treat patient communication and where the providers are? How do we treat them as a unified place rather than 2 different planets? So Avinash and...
You want me to take it first? Okay,
Yes.
sure. So can you orchestrate HCP and DTC marketing so that everything is tightly choreographed, each message, each channel, right when the patient's in there talking to the doctor? Can that be done? It can be done. Should you do it, I think, is a good question. One of the things I've learned by experimenting a lot with, long journeys over time, content sequencing across channels, channel bundling, is that you can overdo it. You can easily overdo it. And in my opinion, the silo between DTC and ACP, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. As long as an ACP marketer, I do my job, I educate the HCPs on the product, they understand what it is, what it's for, how to use it, what patients will respond. And my DTC counterpart is doing the same thing for patients, making sure the patient understands their disease, what options are available to treat that disease, and whether the option that we are offering could be a good fit for them, as long as they do their job. When the patient and the doctor come in and interact with each other, the discussion should lead to the right patient getting the right medicine for them. So I don't know, I'm not a big fan of over-orchestrating because I've tried it, and it kind of breaks the system down because it gets very complicated to build and maintain over time. So I'm taking a little bit of a contrarian point, you might say, Joe.
Love that. Does anyone want to add anything to that? Angela, would you like to add it from an omnichannel perspective?
Yeah, I think in part it's great to have specialization in those quote unquote silos, but they shouldn't be fighting against each other. They should be like flirting, right? So there's ways for you to adapt and take really great nuggets of D2C content built from patient testimonials and weaving them into HCP-facing materials to make it more interactive, to make it more human, to make it feel more personalized. So part of my experience has been predominantly trying to find that patient voice and weave it through everything you can do, from creating a solid podcast that can then be put into like little micro nuggets of information that clinicians actually really care about it. We have the numbers now to support if you're using things like Showpad or your Salesforce teams with trackable links. You can see what types of content that clinicians are actually engaging with when they do open their emails. And most of the time, it comes down to stories with impact, something that feels real and human, or something that is easy and accessible that will help them make the best decision for their patient as quickly as possible.
Thank you. That's a very valid point. And I'm going to now go to its cousin, data. Because, data dashboards, oh my, and Mark Twain said data is like garbage. You better know what you're doing with it. So I'm going to look at you, Shawn, and let's talk about how data and analytics and technology intersect in the HCP universe.
Thanks. First, I think there were some really great points made by the prior presenter about the completeness of the data that's available and visibility to it. I think acknowledging those is pretty important. And I would like to add one thing on top of Gujin's prior point too, which is like the completion of the data also matters if you have 70% complete or 80% capture. It actually really matters what that other 20% is that you're missing. So like a really great example right now is everybody knows like Novo and Lilly, all the DTC, all the cash pay options, like Wegovy pill through Hims and Hers. That data is not visible to anybody else except for Novo, who's getting it from Hims and Hers, right? So that's like a hugely different population than your typical prescriber and a typical patient going into a prescription universe, and they're behaving very differently. So like that's 30% of Wegovy pill business or whatever it is according to their earnings, but it's a very different 30% than the other 70%. So just to make sure the data capture point from Gunjan, I think is really, really smart. ROI, I think, is a really manufactured and nonsensical term in pharma for marketing because if anybody works on a marketing or a brand team, your ROI is calculated off of a new person starting, how many times they fill, and then the ANRP or the realized price per script. You don't have a control over the realized price, and that's also going to vary by contract or PBM or specialty distribution. And fills is often a product of pharmacy or patient support and operations. So in marketing, you're going to be held to a standard of something that you literally can't control. And I think it would be much better for any of the vendors in the room. Like, I'll tell you straight up, I probably could pull up my LinkedIn, there's maybe like 10 emails, I'm like, guaranteed ROI. Like, that's nonsense because you don't know how many fills my patients have, and you don't know how much my margin is per script. So it's impossible for you to say that. I think a much better way to think about it is just like causal inference, just to go back like old school stats, data science is, this is what I'd like to see happen. This is the test that we're going to do, and then we're going to make it, then we're going to run that test. If a vendor approached me with a much more honest capability in that sort of way, that's much more meaningful. You guys might be surprised at how few vendors approach me with the very basic and simple, we're going to do a randomized holdout of your target list. You're giving me 10,000 people, but we're actually not going to give the thing to 500 people, and then we're going to measure the 500 against the 10,000. I can count on one hand how many people have approached me with that, or my brand teams, and that's basic stats 101 on like randomized holdouts to measure if your intervention worked. And if you can't do that, matched controls, and then the intervention. And then there's super basic stat stuff. Like, it doesn't need to be crazy ML AI. But ROI, fundamentally, Joe, I think is kind of a silly thing. And I'd much rather see people think about, this is our hypothesis. This is what I'd like to see happen. And if it doesn't happen, here's what we're going to do about it, / give you a way out of the contract. If you approach me with that, yeah, no, I'm on board. But if you don't, then you're not putting your money where your mouth is, and you're just making stuff up, and you're just talking nonsense, and I'm much less likely to listen to you.
Well, thanks for clarifying that. And it goes back to what Avinash was saying, that it's actually what we do. So I like to look at it as one small step for the rep, one giant leap for the prescription pad. So I agree with you that not all ROI is justified. But I know we all said AI, and it's the word of the day and the year and the month. So I want to get the conversation back to how the CRM world is working with the AI agentic approach. And Avinash, I know you said something about evidence-based communication and targeting. So I'm opening up to the entire panel. Let's talk a little bit about how next best action and CRM and all of that works in this context, in the HCP context.
All right, I'll kick it off. So, great question. I love trying new things out, especially when they're counter to everything you've done before. Let me give you one example. So with the launch that I'm leading from the ACP perspective, on our ACP website, we decided not to have a sign-up button, Most websites, I think maybe all, I don't know, I haven't checked, but many have click here to sign up for our email or information about our brand, right? I see some people nodding their heads, right? It's pretty much a standard tactic for a marketer. So imagine, the look on my boss's face when I said, we're not going to have one. He's like, what's wrong with you? You have to have a button. You have to have a place to sign up. You have to build a database. You can send communications and email streams. You know, that's just what marketing is. That's how we do it. I said, that's not how we do it now. Now I know when somebody comes to the website, thanks to AIM-XR, you know. I can send them communications as soon as they hit the website that's tailored to them being there in that moment. I can also use data triggers to identify when they have patients in the office. There are many ways for me to know when I should communicate with an HCP now and what I should send them. I don't need a database of emails to do it. So I've actually abandoned the traditional CRM for the launch, which is, you know, working out pretty well, as I said. So.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, I can talk about what we do at AZ, and we have a next best action engine that's AI-enabled. So they're taking all those engagement touch points, and it's real-time synthesizing and determining what channel, what HCP, what content, and it is doing like continuous always-on testing. So the years ago when we used to do the headline tests to see which one was working best, we don't have to do that anymore. Now the AI is doing that for us. And I also want to stress that a lot of this isn't brand new, but what is new is how we're able to optimize and the scope and the orchestration that we're able to achieve. So even things like rare disease, like Avinash was talking about, the targeting capabilities using AI is just making this a whole new, I guess, playing field for us as marketers and for doctors too. And yeah, and even just going back to the patient-doctor connection, you know, doctors are also consumers, so they're seeing this stuff and it can be targeted to them, their patients as well. So AI is really bringing that orchestration into a whole new, I think, light going forward, and that's where the companies that are innovative are thinking and moving.
Yeah, and I'd like to add one thing that Angela and Avinash both said, that, you know, meet them where they are, and especially the condition-specific communities. I think 80% of the magic is happening there now. So in light of that, is there any thought that you all have on AI and the whole UX arena? If not, then I can move on to the next segment.
Shawn probably has better things to say, but I can give you a quick real-world example. My best friend is a therapist, is a licensed therapist at Penn Medicine. Her mom is going through cancer treatments, and she is a very informed clinician who is probably overbearing and overmothering her mother. God love her. And she was telling me that she was on a website trying to see if this type of medication would be best for her, and it took so long to try to find exactly what the key benefits are. She was looking for some kind of almost like a peer review article, where you get the key highlights quickly to digest what this would do and if she's compatible. There was no quiz, there was no chat bot to help navigate where she wanted to be, so she switched off and found a different provider. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a few minutes. So if there's like a low-hanging fruit option to incorporate, it's going to take some time to feed the AI engine, but if you can have something that will navigate quickly on your very heavy loaded up website or other areas where you want your clinicians to interact, I would just incorporate that into your overall strategy and trying to make it as quickly and concise as possible.
I mean, one of those is on our name badges, I think. Viva Astro, I think, is one of those agencies that do just that.
Well, we need that.
Kudos to Astro.
Yeah, and I'll just add that there's a lot more coming. There's a lot more coming for patients too, with these AI models and the capability for patients to actually unite all of their medical records and have queries and inquiry-based experiences where they are and in real time. So some of these things haven't even hit the market yet, but I think it'll also change the way that doctors and patients are going to interact.
And then one follow-up question to all of you. How do you think the reps are doing with all of these, you know, devices and chatbots and all of that? Because that, like, you know, Angela was saying about her friend's mom, I think it's very important, A, to understand what questions are being asked, and B, how is the response time? So in the midst of all of this, like, it's not just a sale anymore. It's really you're dealing with someone's health situation. So I just want, like, a brief chime in from all of you on how that side of the house is being handled.
Do you mean, how do the reps like it when they get told next best action and where to go?
Yes.
Or
Yes,
what?
I went there. I went
they
there.
Don't? They
Oh,
don't
well.
like it. There you go.
Yeah, I know they don't.
I mean, right? So
Well, they were the first personalized and targeting channel, weren't they? And now we're telling them how to do it.
yeah, so like next best action, right? I think of Pharma too is kind of funny. Or I think of this one, I think I have a little bit more faith in because, so in Pharma, right, we only really have rep visit, MSL visit, speaker program invite, email. What else we got? Like a virtual sign-up sheet sometimes. Like there's only like 6, 7 actions that we can actually fundamentally interact with somebody. So the whole principle of next best action just being like, oh, then it needs to be this, then this, then this, then that. I mean, honestly, we only have like 6 to 7 ways. You're rep constrained, you're MSL constrained, and then you're compliance constrained on the borders between commercial interactions and then even medical. So like, we don't have a lot to do. Like fundamentally, we don't have many ways to reach folks. So I think what I've seen of really good next best action, now most pharma companies, their MBAs are proprietary unless they're buying off the shelf. Is IQVIA here? IQVIA? Nah, cool. All right, so unless you're buying IQVIAs, then they're usually proprietary. So obviously I can't speak to the proprietary ones that are built in-house, such as AZ's, like Stacy said, or a few other companies I know. But on those ones that are not proprietary, I mean, it's a lot of work to eventually land it like the rep should go see them next day. And the rep's not gonna do that because it's a 2-week call planning on most reps, right? Or like the MSL should go there now. It's like your MSL lives in Florida, that doctor's in Georgia. Like they're not gonna, how? So that's actually what I've seen happen a lot. I agree in principle with the next best action on sort of a sequential flow to drive an outcome, but really just nailing that down seems, and simplifying it, I think is really powerful. And then, Joe, to your actual question, from what I've seen, most people don't really like it because the pushback is, you're a computer telling me what to do, how dare you? And 2 is, I know my customers better than the computer does. So, you know, that's always going to be the fundamental thing at the end of the day for the rep aspect of things, if that's for your question. So.
And they want more print materials. More print materials. Always more print
I
materials.
started inviting here.
Print and digital. both.
17 PIs.
Yeah, no, if I could build on what Shawn said, I totally agree, you know. We don't actually have next best actions for our rare disease launch, right? It's just alerts. Hey, this doctor has a patient in the waiting room right now. If you can get in there, it would probably go well because they're going to want to hear from you because they have a patient that's appropriate for our product right now. But we don't tell them, send this email, you know, schedule a speaker program. So there's no next best action. It's just alerts that they get. Now, the problem with that is some of our teams get tons of alerts, you know, on the same people over and over again. So I know Dr. Smith has 10 patients. I know that already. Stop sending me alerts. That's what we hear on that end of the spectrum. And then on the other side, you hear from our reps that say they don't get any alerts. They wish they could get alerts. So it's not perfect, but I totally agree with Shawn. You know, it's not about choreographing each action necessarily, but the information can be helpful, that there's a patient there.
Yeah, I'm much more in favor of like suggestions rather than being super prescriptive.
There's also the alert fatigue that they're dealing with the EHR workflow.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing. We've experienced at AZ that, you know, a lot of reps do get a lot of suggestions. And the big challenge for reps is like, how do I fit this into my call plan? How do I fit it into my system, the way I manage my relationships? And, you know, we're trying to position it as it's another data point for you to think about. You know, some of the data work that we're doing, we're able to identify for reps those that are promotionally sensitive HCPs. So again, trying to cut down on the waste and be smarter about how we communicate and meeting the HCP where they are is another way that we're trying to address it. But agree with the rest of the panel.
Well, thank you for that. So now that brings me to my next best action. Why can't I say this? Next best action, which is if you weren't worried about what is going to be said in your LinkedIn comments, what's the one takeaway you'd give the room today? One from each of you. It's a safe space.
He's always looking at me. Proximity is being taken over by discoverability. Make sure you find ways to reach, you can't reach everybody, but try new ways to be creative. So I'm a big proponent of get the most bang for your buck when I'm working with clients. And if we have a KOL agreement, for example, we might not be able to wine and dine the KOLs like we used to before until the night hours, but we can send them to conferences. We can have them show up at our booth. We can have them bring credibility to places where we still meet and we still show up with them. So in-person conferences are clearly not dead, and they're still breeding great relationships. Make sure you bring a little Rode mic with you, a wireless mic, and capture their thoughts when you're with them. Sit down and do, even if it's your first podcast that maybe no one will watch, put up a camera, sit down, engage with them, ask them questions, figure out what the real problems are in their day-to-day, get to know them, go back to bringing that proximity here, and in the meantime, work on your discoverability. Where can you show up exactly where they are? In preparing for this talk, it's not my area of expertise with electronic health records, but apparently we can basically place ads in electronic health records, which feels dangerous and illegal, but it's not. But if you want, you can partner up with PulsePoint and other companies. It's not legal?
No, it's illegal. No.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's
'Cause
compliant.
it's compliant, but as long as you keep investing in clinical case studies and having that evidence and support, you can find backdoor entries to be exactly where your clinicians are, even if it feels dodgy. So enjoy it, because that party will probably be over soon, too.
Okay, who's my next victim?
I would, to keep it terse, kind of long-winded, I think it'd just say like simplify and test things. Everybody right now really wants to get more and more. There's like a complicated arms race going on, but I do think there's a lot of value in simplifying, stating what you're hoping to impact, and then testing that, and then moving along. There's so much data, there's so much information. It's super overwhelming. It's crazy overwhelming for people who have a data science background for 10 years or whatever, let alone for people who data might not be their thing. So I just think simplifying, testing, and asking people what you're actually trying to impact, how you're gonna measure that, and then how are you gonna know if it worked or not, and then what are you gonna do if it didn't work. I think those are the most simplify and test.
All right, so my one thing, I'm going to be contrarian. I don't know, I think I'm feeling contrarian today. I'm not sure
I
why.
love that.
Usually, I'm like, keep me on the cutting edge. I want to try everything that's out there. There's so much happening. I don't want to miss out. So instead of saying that, I'll say one of the things we're learning is that, there's so many partners, clearly, that you can work with. There's so many things you can try. Sometimes just figuring out what's the one thing that seems like it's working really well that you can do more and more of, and maybe do less of other things? What's the one destination where all of your customers are at that you can communicate with in platform? I won't say the one that we use now a lot, but there's one that's taking up a third of our media budget because all the customers are there. They have 8 or 10 offerings that you can use to communicate with them, and it's working out great. So maybe do less in order to do more.
Less is more.
And I know I'm at the end of the row and right before lunch, so I'll be brief as well. I guess when I think about it being a strategist, that's the way I look at it. So I think that the companies that are going to win in the future are the ones that are going to look at what HCPs need. They're going to look at the friction points and find out ways to show up in the market that's less about communicating information and more about service and support. Because I think that's going to quickly become an expectation. I think that some of this technology will actually commoditize over the next few years, so it's going to come back to the customer service and the support to differentiate.
What a beautiful bow to the topic, personalized, hyper-personalized experience. So I'd like to thank my stellar panel for all these insights and then open the floor for questions.
Yes, first of all, let's give Joe and obviously Avinash, Shawn, Angela, and Stacy a round of applause for their insights during that session. We've got about 10 minutes or so before lunch, so there's plenty of time for Q&A. And hands up, and I'll make my way to you.
Hi, Susanna Foos with Insight Pharmaceuticals. HCP's attention spans are falling due to oversaturation of media, much like all of us in the room. How have you seen ways to overcome this within ads and getting important information to HCPs within a short period of time while staying compliant? Kind of think like the 5-second hook, how are we being entertaining and educational at the same time?
All right, I'll go first. So using data is one of the ways, right? There's so many ways that you can harness data now that it's mind-boggling. It is spooky. I'll concede that, but it is legal too. I'll also say that. We're also doing things that are very compliant, but patient-level triggers. So I know when an HCP has a patient, and not just one type of patient, like 6 different types of patients. A patient that may not be getting an optimal dose of a competitor drug, for example. I know when that's happening in a doctor's office, and I can send a communication to that HCP that says, hey, you don't say that, hey, you have a patient right now that is this characteristics. Let me tell you about my product. You just tell them about your product in a moment when they have a patient that's perfectly appropriate, that, in my opinion. So that's one way, using data to communicate, using triggers, basically. And then the other way is back to what Shawn said, testing and learning. That's so important. From testing and learning, we realized that our banner ads that mention patient perform much better than the banner ads that don't. Well, guess what? All of our banner ads mention patient now. Not literally, but more or less. So we leaned into patient profiles and putting patient images. We only knew that worked because we tried it, and it performed better than other things where we didn't have that. So those are my 2 thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just build on what you were saying too. If you have a next best model within your organization, feed it. Give it the creative to choose from, and then let it go to town and let it do the testing. But you have to feed the machine. And that's another thing I think a lot of companies aren't aware of yet. But these are huge processors, which we heard earlier in the morning. So give it something to work with.
One of the assets I work on is in obesity, and it's to the simple answer is I think it's actually impossible for us to compete because we have an ISI that will always have to be there, and we're up against telemedicine companies which are exempt from the FDA's rules on commercial advertisement. So fundamentally, it's impossible. So my short answer would actually be, I think it's kind of really, really hard, if not impossible, depending on the therapeutic state and the FDA's current handling of different ways to get drug, which is super varied across the board, and making it harder and harder for pharma companies. So I'll just co-sign on Avinash's bit here about triggers, something we do too. It's not crazy difficult. Like TI Health was originally under Erin DiRuggiero. She did that, and then she sold it off to Swoop. Swoop has it. Pretty much everybody has a good patient trigger one now. So that's kind of the closest way we can get, which is a little bit better than some of the telehealth folks to some extent. That's mine.
And just to add, you should also be showing up where your patients are. Your patients are TikToking their symptoms. They are looking for other people having experiences with the drugs that you sell. They want to know what that looks like. How can you involve that as part of your overall strategy compliantly? You got to schmooze your legal and regulatory teams a lot to be able to even set up an account. But nothing, at least, amazes me more when I see a random company come into the comment section of a video where they have no business being there, but it's so funny you're like, okay, Pepsi, I see you. Or, okay, Dr. Scholl's, or what, somebody where you start to immediately get that ease with that company because they probably have a really good Gen Z team behind them that are putting that forward. But don't overlook the fact that clinicians are in those spaces too. So if you can build a case for it, sometimes it's like taking spaghetti and sticking it against the wall. It's okay to not be so personalized. I'll be contrarian there. See what sticks, because the variety of these platforms now are there when it comes to a great hook, a great concept, and great partnerships with the right patients and clinicians to be more creative that you can then put into your overall omni-channel approach. So
So the donuts are for the legal and med team, in other words.
yeah, exactly.
There's one question here.
This is absolutely fascinating. So I want to build on something you said, like a futuristic statement, and on your part about triggering. It's thinking to the future on how agentic AI can play both on the pharma side as well as HCP and the patient side, because that's the fear that now you're just going to have AI talking to AI, and that is going to be your hyper non-personalized experience, however they're using. So thinking towards the future, what do you see happening?
Is your question about what do we see happening in terms of personalization, or?
The role of agentic AI in this whole communication experience that we're talking about here today.
Yeah, I think it's still evolving, quite honestly. I don't think we know the full capabilities of it. We don't know how people are going to respond to it going forward. I think we're just at the very cusp of this and how it's going to translate into relationships and relationships with brands. So that would kind of be I think TBD. But I think you got to get in the game, and you have to be trying it and learning along with the rest of industry and with everybody. And it's not, by the way, just healthcare. It's obviously way, way bigger than that. So, yeah, I think healthcare and pharma companies and physicians and hospital practices are all going to have to figure this out. And there is going to be a certain amount of risk that's going to be involved. So you have to be prepared.
Yeah, I agree. But you also can't be scared. You have to
Yeah.
try things out. You can put parameters around AI, right, and give it in a manuscript, a variable manuscript that you get through MLR, you get it approved, and then it can only pull from that content to personalize. That's what, we do that now with, say, for example, dynamic creative optimization, DCO banners. You create a variable manuscript on the images, the copy, and based on the person that's viewing the banner, it customizes the execution individually. I think that's awesome. I think, I don't know if it's better than the way we used to do it before, but probably it is. And like I said, I don't, we're not here to plug any partners, but the one that's on your name badge, they've got some really cool AI tools that they can plant on your website, like was suggested. And I think that's great, because I'm okay with AI talking to AI. That's the world we live in. You just have to put some controls around it so it doesn't go haywire, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just wanted to add on, we heard the first speaker of the morning talking about the way learning is changing, and sometimes I think AI is going to be a middle layer of learning. So it may not be the end. Maybe it's towards the beginning, but I think there could be a middle layer of learning that's going to be incorporated into how people make decisions. So again, how to be seen, how does that go? But, AI is also a data point. So, we'll see where it lands.
Is your question about like AI, doctors using AI to interact and understanding things, and then how it might be shown to the patient?
There's an aspect of that, because I can actually see them being overwhelmed with information, just like we all are.
Sure.
So as we develop AI agents to work on our behalf,
Right.
I can see that happening where they are using it to sort the world, taking information. Now it becomes part of the strategy of how to communicate with them, knowing that they're doing this. And I'm kind of curious what you think will end up happening if that is the end result.
Well, that was the first graphic from the first speaker with the distributions, model recursivity. But that graphic was from 2026 from, they're out of Oxford, that publication, the three distributions where the tails were getting cut off. So that,
I'm here for the first talk. So
right on.
covering ground that's already
No, you're good. So, like, that's model recursivity, which is they're going to start saying, what's the nerdiest way ever to just say they're going to start saying the same things because they're just learning from each other and they're just going to keep going toward the same answer. So, like, specifically, doctors asking, what are you going to do in this instance, or patient, what should I get if I have these symptoms? They're just going to start spitting. The easiest way to think about it is they're going to start spitting out the same drug over and over and over and over again, and they're just going to keep saying that's the best one. I think that's kind of disastrous. Now, the model recursivity, the paper that was up there from 2026 out of Oxford, I mean, that's been something that's been publicized since like 23, 24, when all the stuff started kicking off. And I think still you get a diversity of answers if you go and ask stuff. So I think it's going to be tricky, but I mean, we're 3 years into it, and if anybody in the room right now goes on to like any AI thing and says, I have, put in any patient profile, what you get, you don't typically get one answer back right now. So like, weirdly, we kind of haven't at that point, but like, yeah, I think we're going toward it, which could kind of be bad. And then you look at, I think it's really bad, actually, because more and more people are using it, and then you get simpler and simpler answers, and then you're going to get bad healthcare decisions out of it. I think there's a lot of danger in it. And then government oversight, like Fable 5 was shut down, like literally yesterday? Yeah, right? Yesterday. So,
Yeah, over the security
yeah,
issues.
right? So, like, that one, I think, that's the government, U.S. government saying Fable should be shut down, and then they did. So I think that's kind of tricky. That was a long-winded way of saying I actually think it's super disastrous because I think they're going to start going toward one answer, and I don't really see many people talking about that.
Well, you scared them enough before lunch.
I was going to say there's a lot of debate over that.
Super upper.
So don't leave with a negative. There are definitely, Shawn, we could debate this for another hour. But it is worth thinking about. There's an upside, and there's a risk, yeah.
All right. Any more questions or comments? Yes, we're almost there.
Hello. Oh, well, that's loud. I do have a question about medical claims. Have you guys noticed a trend how important it is to really be able to own the education piece? Because as you mentioned, a lot of people are getting their information on social media and cutting through that noise. Have you noticed a trend that it's really important to continuously educate consumers, or even finding new medical claims with existing drugs that you already have?
When you're talking about medical claims, are you talking about diagnosis of disease states, or?
Well, claims of the drug. So, they'll have claims of course, what it's solving, but are you looking into also finding new claims with the drugs that they have other effects that they might be able to help out with?
Oh, you're saying like a
Product
marketing claim.
Yeah, and a marketing claim. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was.
Yeah, sorry. Oh.
I mean, I guess the science is the science, the data is the data. And if you're a responsible company, that is what you're basing your claims on. So personally, and in my experience, I don't see that actually happening. I'll let the other panelists respond.
Same. We can't go off of what folks are saying. It's all driven by the clinical trial and the actual published evidence. Those are what our claims are.
Even when working with influencers, there's a huge piece where you have to make sure you're hand-holding every step of the way so that they're not going off IFU, and ensuring that everything is approved by your review team before that goes out. But what you can't control is what that person says when you're not in contract with them, because I've had some sticky examples where they went off and said, oh yeah, I blow dry my ostomy bag. I'm like, what? We didn't say that's okay. So yeah, there's constant monitoring, and I think that's why humans have to always show up, because otherwise these things could run amok if we leave it completely at their own devices. But yeah.
Thank you. Any more final questions, comments? I'm going to get out of the way.
Thank you to my panel again, and thank you for being a wonderful audience. And thank you, Simon, for putting all this together.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Joe, Avinash. and the rest. And so obviously we're gonna hop into lunch now. Thank you all for your questions, comments. Obviously, please do keep that coming through the next sessions.